In today's video, we go over a game by none other than Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura as he plays one of the most underrated chess openings in the game overall, that being the Ponziani opening. Let's take a look. Now, the Ponziani starts out with e4. It's an e4 opening against e5, in which case we're playing knight f3, but instead of playing d4 here against knight c6, which, by the way, defends the pawn on e5, we're playing c3, looking to prepare that d4 push. Okay, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Ponziani, very underrated. There's been multiple grandmasters that have played it with good success, and Hikaru is one of them. Now, we got this move of knight f6, and against this, I mean, we have some options here, right? There's some moves that we could play, but the main line is d4, right? Just advancing in the center of the board, and I've covered this position in depth, along with a lot of other lines and variations in my Ponziani opening course. If you're interested in the Ponziani and you want to, kind of grow your skills in this area, just check out the description down below. In that description, I have a link to my Ponziani course, which is over 4 hours of content, and I'll also link it in the top comment as well. So you can just go down to the top comment, and I'll have the link pinned there if you want to go check out that course. I mean, I've covered a ton of these lines. One of the lines I cover is knight takes e4. I mean, this is very important. d5 is an option. Bishop g3 is an option as well. But now against, d5, the main line for black is bishop c5. But the only way you're going to know this is if you've studied this, right? I mean, that's about the only way. It's very hard for me to believe that someone that's never studied Ponziani opening theory, which, by the way, most haven't, is going to play a move like bishop c5 here. I mean, oftentimes you'll see a move like knight e7. You take off that pawn, right? You got a pawn, I'll get a pawn back. And now if we move like d6, in this case, I see this move all the time, even at my level, all the time. Most common move by far, bishop e5 would check. White is simply crushing this. Okay, white is crushing this position here. A ton of traps, but even if black plays perfectly, it's about +3 for white. So we'll take that. But okay, d4 is played in the game. Here, Nakamura's opponent, Benjamin Bach, actually takes the pawn on d4, and in that case, let's take some space, right? Let's kick that knight around, and the second that knight moves, we take on d4. We have a very strong center here. Black ends up checking, and now we have a couple of different options. We could play bishop d2 or knight d2. In this game, we have knight d2 from knight bd2 from Nakamura. And okay, d6 is played. We now have bishop e5. I cover this in my course like again and again and again. There's so many lines in the Ponziani where if you see d6, you gotta drop this bishop here immediately. And that's exactly what Hikaru does. Just pinning that knight to the opponent's king. That knight can't move anywhere now, and at any point in time, we can take it if we want to, right? Black castles, we castle back. Black pins our knight. Okay, let's kick that bishop around, right? The bishop goes back, and we now have queen b3 from Hikaru, really looking to attack that knight and put some pressure on that dark square bishop as well, right? The pawn takes, and this is a key example here. D takes e5, solid move, right? Nothing wrong with it. By the way, knight takes e5 here, not the best idea because of knight takes d4. We're now down a pawn, and our queen's attacked, and our bishop's attacked, and yeah, it's just not great, right? So in this case, though, we could take with the d pawn, but instead we have bishop takes c6 first, and I love this move because, sure, after knight takes e5 from white now, well, first off, there's no knight here, right? But secondly, okay, we have an isolated pawn, sure. But black has an isolated pawn and double isolated pawns on the c file. If you see d6, play bishop b5, and oftentimes at some point you can take on c6. And yeah, I mean, black's pawn structure is just absolutely just terrible. There's no way around it. I mean, this pawn on c6 in particular, very weak. So, we're putting pressure on it. If black here plays a move like queen d6, which is what happens in the game, we now have knight e4. Kicking the queen around, queen e6, we kick the queen around again, and now queen f5 was played. This is a blunder from Grandmaster Benjamin Bach because of g4, and here black resigns the game because your queen's getting forked along with your bishop, and yeah, I mean, if you play a move like bishop takes g4, we just take back. The queen goes back, and you're now down 2 points. You're a piece for a pawn. You're down a piece for a pawn against Hikaru Nakamura, one of the best players in the world. Okay, so it's probably not going to go well. I'm just going to put that out there. But okay, queen goes back. I mean, what could happen here? A move like queen c2, right? Attacking that pawn on c6, but more than that, threatening mate in 1. The second you stop that, we play here, threatening your bishop. The second the bishop moves, we take on f7. I mean, no matter how you want to cut this one up, white's just crushing this. Okay, so nice game from Hikaru. I mean, again, right? We got the Ponziani, e4, knight f3, c3, preparing the d4 push. And in a lot of lines, we play d4. I mean, as I covered in my course, if you see a move like d6, we can play d4. Knight f6, we can play d4. Bishop c5, we can play d4. Even against the move of f5, d4 is an option here against the Ponziani counter gambit, right? So, as well as taking on f5. Though the one move that I don't like d4 against is d5, right? In this case, I'm a big fan of queen a4, pinning that knight to the king. You may be wondering, wait, what about that pawn on e4? Well, instead of taking that pawn on e4 with the queen, facing knight f6, and our queen's now getting kicked around like a soccer ball, mid-game, we're just going to play knight takes e5, and guess what? That knight's pinned. Right, the knight's pinned. We're even in material. We got 2 attackers on that guy. We're also attacking the pawn on e4. And white here with a solid game. So overall, c3, there's a lot of different moves here that you could see from black. And against really any of these highlighted moves, d4 is a strong option. And we see that in this game. Thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so that you don't miss out on anything coming our way. And on top of that, I wanted to give a big shout out to my Patreon supporters for the month of November in 2023. Big love to y'all. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon member, you can click on a link down in the description below. And in that, you will see all the benefits, including one in which we recently added, which is actually a once a month session with me, in which case we go over patrons games. I'll see y'all in the next one.